we're online. Welcome to Philosophy Sciencing.
My name is
We were
Ruby.
I'm Nathan, and today we are talking about pesticides and scientific risk review and kind of and Monsanto and in general, like how safe are you and like what should you know about pesticides and stuff in your food and stuff in your home. Um, we were just laughing about I was looking at this at our episode notes, and Ruby has this thing that says plant exploded and bunch of people got horrible acne, and Hamburg dermatologist told it was bad. Arrow covered up question exclamation mark question mark. Yeah, so I am curious to hear what that is about. But I think also let's see, just checking the sound here. Um, yeah, but I think also I wanted to first just start with talking about kind of pesticides and in general, like the science about them. And also just checking that our audio streaming is working, which it looks like it is. Yeah, I guess so. Here's an interesting question. Um, What what percent of foods in the US do you think have like, would you estimate have like harmful levels of pesticides on them? Like that could
Ooh,
harm your health in any way?
ooh, that's such a hard question because I don't know if we have enough research on like our gut biome and how it's affected by pesticides. So
Hmm.
like the answer could be like none because like it doesn't matter. Like the gut biome doesn't matter if you completely ignore that.
Hmm.
Like no one's
Yeah.
dying immediately of eating a little bit of pesticides. On the other hand, pesticides depending on how like historically like their little job is to kill things, right? Like kill different kinds of
Hmm.
things, kill particular kinds of weeds, kill particular kinds of yeast, bacteria, fungi, or kill everything. Like I mean back in the day they were using arsenic to kill
Hmm.
everything, right? So
Right.
that's a hard question. And um I think the real question is how much control do we have on consuming food without pesticides? Like, I don't think it's possible. I would say like 80%.
Yeah.
80%
Hmm.
and up is food. Like, if I had to guess. All right, how close am I?
Is food that has like harmful levels of pesticides, you would estimate, or
We'll have laced amounts of pesticides, and I don't know if it's bad or good for me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think, yeah, I actually don't know the amount that um, actually kind of contains detectable amounts of pesticides. But I think the really interesting thing, and I think this is going to be like the most controversial, but also like the most factually like non-controversial thing I say today is that if you live in the US or in most developed countries, there is really no risk, no health risk to you from pesticide exposure in food. And we have really good data on this. It turns out. So the USDA has this thing called the pesticide data program, where they take samples of all the foods that are sold in like supermarkets and restaurants and stuff in the US, and they measure the levels of the pesticides, and then they compare it to basically the lowest levels of the pesticides that are known to cause any harmful effects. And generally speaking, the level that's permitted to be in a food is set to about 100th of the highest dose that causes no detectable biological effects in studies. And so I think this is really interesting because for all that kind of pesticide exposure is talked about in the media, when you talk to public health people, like it's really just not a thing. Like you look at like, okay, what are health people actually worried about, especially in food? It's mostly bacterial contamination and contamination with other industrial contaminants. So like when you look at like when things are being recalled, um, like when there's food recalls or food contamination incidents, when you really look at what's going on, most of them are things with bacterial outbreaks where it's like a bacterium or
Yeah.
bacteria toxin was found in the food. Um, the
Coli, Listeria, Salmonella.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. The other thing that will happen quite frequently is that you'll see contamination just with other industrial chemicals that are involved in the processing of the food in some way. So, for example, there's been cases of accidental or sometimes even intentional contamination with like lead, with like plastic compounds. In one case, with this like a chemical called melamine that was actually introduced to make the food seem like it had more protein in it than it really did. Um, it's very, very rare, like maybe once every 5 years or something, to actually see hazardous levels of pesticides like appear in food. And so I think this is super interesting because it like I feel like the way this is presented in the media is really different from like what the people who are doing research on this think is going on. And I think to the point where like you'll act like one of the really strange things that you see in the US media is like there's a bunch of like random news organizations that will do like an investigation or a report and they'll be like, we found that like 20% of the food has harmful levels of pesticides. And it turns out they had to like they almost always are doing this using this like criteria that they just made up for like what a harmful level of pesticide is.
So
And yeah.
that's so this is my issue. My issue
Hmm.
is any level of pesticides okay for like, you know, like as a biologist. Like I'm like I don't think it's gonna
Yeah.
immediately do anything wrong with me. I eat lots of foods straight from the farm. I have no problem with it. But like,
Hmm.
what is it doing to the human race on the long term? Like, are we fucking up our gut biomes, like for the in the long run? Because we have like we're going to talk a little bit about the actual pesticides and how they work, right? Some of it is a growth
Yeah.
hormone. Some of it is like they're
Hmm.
literally some of them utilize a part of a pathway that we normally like only plants have, but plants and bacteria have it too. So like while we are fine, the bacteria that we have a symbiotic relationship with are not fine. And
Yeah.
any amount of it could be harmful, not immediately, and like it could be like 4 generations from now, but like there are clear trends in like human diseases that are more prevalent now than before. I can't They're all correlations. There are no
Yeah.
causations right now. They're all just correlations. Um,
Yeah.
that's why I'm like I hesitant to be like, yeah, it's fine, everything is okay. But like I'm always, but yeah, okay, fair.
Yeah. I mean,
I agree
and
with
I
you.
will say, like, I mean, I think this is definitely a thing. I mean, I do think like we can get some causal data because like we do have procedures for studying chronic effects in animal models too. And like we do that. So like with a lot of toxicological studies, we look at like what's the acute effect and like what's the effect of like a low dose on this when you give it to an animal that's pregnant, like what's the effect on its offspring. Like we do have ways of looking at this. And I think when you talk to people who are not conspiracy theorists, like toxicologists who are not conspiracy theorists, most of them are like, I mean, and like they're scientists, right? So they're like there's always like this question, like no one is ever like, oh yeah, we're 100% sure that kind of we've got this figured out, like that there isn't something that we're missing. But they tend to be pretty sure. And I think the other thing like that's done here that's important is the permissible levels are usually 100 times lower than the highest level that we find that causes like any adverse effect. And it's really rare to find that something is like 100 times more toxic than we thought it was. Like sometimes we
Sure.
find that like something is like 2 or 3 times more toxic than you thought it was. But the idea with these safety standards is even if we kind of messed up, it should be enough to like keep it from poisoning people.
We should come back and talk about forever chemicals and lead and um like let's come back in a different episode and
Mhm.
talk about the levels of that because I feel
Yeah.
like that because those are not food and like there's
Hmm.
not like a direct consumption all the time besides like buying, refrigerators or whatever, and like we don't think about it. We don't think about leaded gas and
Right.
how like
Uh-huh.
we just like
Yeah.
leaded the air and it's just like everywhere. Like we like it's different. Let's do
Yeah.
food. Let's
Mhm.
do edible things today. Like
Yeah. Yeah. I
trace
mean, I think
amounts.
that's Yeah, I think that's also like I think that's like also a really important distinction when we're talking about pesticides too, is like there is really two things, well actually three things that we generally think about. One is like what is the effect of exposure in food? And like the evidence really seems to point to that is a non-issue. The second one is like what is the effect of exposure to like people who are working with the pesticides and agricultural industrial things, and that's kind of where you see more effects because those people are being exposed to much higher doses of them. I think
Yeah.
a big part of like why it's such a non-issue in food is that we're really good at getting contaminants off of food, which is good because even without pesticides, like farms are pretty gross. Like birds are pooping on your food, like rats are nibbling on your food. Like for food to be safe, we have to like be good at getting stuff off of it. Um, but and that really reduces the pesticide levels to extremely low levels. Yeah, and then the third thing is kind of what is the effect of the pesticides on the environment? So like on fish, on birds, on other things that are like interacting with these ecosystems. And I think and that one is also an interesting mixed bag. There's different pesticides, they have different effects. Interestingly, um, like when this comes up, like we were talking about Monsanto, and I think one of the interesting things and one of the concerns that people have about like kind of with replacing glyphosate, which is Roundup, the thing that Monsanto developed, is that a lot of the things that you'd replace it with potentially have worse effects on the workers and on the environment. So it's like it gets complicated.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to talk about like how people came up with ways to like make uh plants that are impervious to the certain pesticides, and like the discovery of that is also like it's a little wild. I was just like so you knew. We'll get to it. Let's start with
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
let's start with Agent Orange, which is
Oh
2,4-D.
yeah.
Yeah, let's start with
Or actually,
2,4-D.
I wanted to mention one other. I mean, maybe we'll get to this too. And I think another really interesting thing about thinking about the science of this is so there's the effects of like on workers, and I think that like that also became like so recently there was this idea like this became really kind of in the news in around 2015, 2016, because that was like when the the WHO Cancer Agency said that glyphosate, like if you're exposed to it occupationally, not in health, but like people who work with, or not in food, but like people who work with glyphosate were at increased risk because of these cancers. And I think what was really interesting about this is that like they said this, and then all these other agencies um, that like looked at this basically were they did reassessments and they were kind of like, I don't know what you're talking about. They like so for example, this IARC said it was probably a carcinogen. The EU Health Agency, the US Health Agency, Canadian Health Agency, Australian, like basically all these national health agencies reevaluated and they all came to the conclusion that it wasn't. And I like we can talk more about like the reasons. Like there's some various. It basically comes down to like what evidence do you use and like what kinds of things, and are you talking about glyphosate versus like the other additives that are packaged with it? But I think one of the really interesting things that I thought about this was that when IARC found that it caused cancer, basically they were looking at these studies of evidence that it could damage DNA. And they found that about 70% of them said that it could, and about 30% of them said that it couldn't. I think what I was really struck by was like, that is not a very strong effect. Like it's kind of if we had that in cognitive neuroscience, like we would say like, okay, this effect doesn't really replicate very much. And of course, different places have different standards. But I think one thing that's really kind of important to think about is like for things that cause a lot of health effects, like it tends to be really obvious. And like we've mentioned this before. I think there's this kind of thing in science where it's like you can't really differentiate. It's very hard to differentiate like a very small effect from no effect, but also in a practical sense, sometimes you don't care that much. And I think that's kind of a part of what's creating some of this confusion too.
Oh, I was gonna. We are definitely
Yeah.
gonna come back to talk about this because I have it in my
Mhm.
notes, and
Yeah.
why actually okay, we can talk about it now actually. So this is
Mhm.
actually the reason I brought this Monsanto's up as the topic for this week, because we were talking about last week
Mhm.
about like what causes scientists to do, I guess, evil things. Like why would we
Uh-huh.
like perjure ourselves? Like why would we ever go out of our way to mislead the public? And here's an
Mhm.
example where the scientists in academia have two different goals. Like this, sorry, the companies that make the chemicals have different goals than the scientists, which is like to make discoveries and like I don't know, kill weeds that give children poison ivy or something. They're like, I want
Uh-huh.
a thing to
Yeah.
kill the weeds so my kids don't get poison ivy. That is the intention of the scientists going in. And they're like, we want, to have a weed killer that everyone can use. Sounds great, right? The
Mhm.
On the other hand, the motivations of a company that would fund his work would be like, we want to sell as many bottles of weed killer as possible. So we want it. They have a high interest in saying that this is a safe product. And so when the funding stream that funds the work and the person that does the safety for that work is the same group of people. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a conflict
Mhm.
of interest here. Um,
Yeah.
and then let's add, multiple companies. So you mentioned the IARC, the glyphosate causes
Mhm.
cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Like here is a fairly decent study on it. And
Mhm.
then like immediately like within 2 years, 5 different review articles come through and says all these other papers say that it's actually fine, and like we also say it's fine. And then you look at the internal papers from the Monsanto's emails, and you realize that the executives that were consultants on these papers and not authors, they ghost wrote three of those
Yeah.
5 review papers. And then you're sat there and you're like, wait, why are executives that work at a private company that makes the drug or makes the pesticide also the ones doing the writing of the papers that says it's safe? Like
Yeah.
that in
I
itself
was
freaks me out. Like, and it's
yeah,
not disclosed.
I was reading one where it was disclosed, where I guess it was good, but I was reading up. It was a review about like glyphosate and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and basically they were saying like, okay, the review said like, okay, there's some effects that like they could be attributed to other compounds, and I was like looking at it, and I'm like, it's basically like it was actually written by people at Monsanto, and I was kind of what what is the point of this? Like if you think that they're and I think this is kind of interesting actually. It's like, okay, if you think that like that has an unavoidable conflict of interest, then like what even is the point of publishing it? Like someone let them publish it, and I'm still kind of like, why? Like, does this really add anything to our understanding of
Like
what's going
why are
on?
editors in journals like allowing this
Yeah.
to go? I don't know
Hmm.
who's paying who. We do have to pay journals to publish. Maybe the journals are like, we just want your money. But on top of that, these company, oh, specifically Monsanto's, had a policy called "Let Nothing Go." Literally, if we were talking about this, if we had this podcast in 2018, let's say like 8 years ago, when this company was still a thing, we would have been flagged and we would have
Mhm.
been like on there and they would have sent bots and people to come after us for talking about this.
Mhm.
Like that's how
Yeah.
crazy it is. Maybe they still have bots coming out after us after we talk about it today. Like that's how
Yeah.
crazy it was. Like they sent private detectives, or no, sorry, private investigators, like you hire PIs to go, not science PIs, like ex-cop
Like
PIs.
private investigators like to stalk people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to literally stalk farmers, to stalk scientists, to stalk anyone that was saying anything, any of the
Hmm.
people that are publishing the papers, that are like, every single one of those authors in the IARC paper, like they were like heavily surveyed
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
of this, right? Like that's like, if you genuinely had a safe product, like would you be so aggressive about saying, do you know what I mean?
I mean, actually, I think you do.
You do?
Like I think that this is something that's talked about a lot. I think it's kind of a fallacy to say like, okay, because this company is legally aggressive, that means their product is inherently unsafe. I think like so so one of I mean the legal system in the US makes it really easy to sue people for stuff that doesn't actually happen. And like I think that's one of their that's actually kind of I think their biggest interest right now. So Monsanto got bought by Bayer. It's actually considered like basically one of the worst acquisitions ever because it was bought like immediately before this IARC study came out, and then people started using like
All the
study
lawsuits.
to as grounds to sue Monsanto for making this thing that they claimed gave them cancer. Of course, it's very hard to say like, okay, you have cancer because of this and not like some other reason. But it's like basically because it's so easy to sue people in the US,
Yeah.
companies will be aggressive about stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, the thing is for me is that before all these papers came out, we didn't know any of this was happening, right? The entire public had no idea that in the 80s, like the early 80s, the first EPA study on the safety of Roundup and glyphosate
mhm,
was that, hey, it has weird kidney effects on rodents. I think you need to
mhm.
do repeat experiments. And then they went back and forth being like, no, we don't need to do experiments. Yes, you need to do experiments. EPA was like, yes, you need to do experiments. Yes, you need to do experiments.
So this was
Then,
the EPA saying to Monsanto that they needed to do more experiments.
correct. And there was
Yeah.
actually telling the third party to do more experiments. And then Monsanto was like, no, we will not need to, we don't need to fund another study. And I was just like, okay, you don't. And then that was like 6 to 9 years. And then
Mhm.
in 1989, suddenly the EPA was like, all right, cool, you don't have to do any new experiments. So they never did the experiments. And then
Ah,
they
uh-huh.
like kind of just slid it under. By 1999, they were like, it's actually safe now. So it went from, we think there's something fishy, to it's we don't need to, it's fishy but not fishy enough for us to redo the study, to actually it's just safe. And that is the paper, the 2000 like Williams, Crow, and Monroe paper, which is actually not an independent paper because it was ghost
Mhm.
written, is
By
the
the
it's
Monsanto
yeah,
people.
yes, it is the
Mhm.
most cited safety paper out there. And so like I'm
Mhm.
like, how hard is it to just do it again? Just do the experiment again and it's fine. Like go dope up some mice and like tell us the answer. Like hire some lab to do it that has no idea which product is which. Go blind, double blind, agent ABCDEF, and then show us the results, and then
I mean,
we'll be
and
over with it, right?
I think other labs have done this though, right? Like other like there's been other kind of comprehensive assessments of the toxicity of this that have looked at that.
Probably in the more recent years, like in the like after 2018. Like
Mhm.
we didn't know it was not safe. Like this is because of this like hand wave, like please do the thing, we don't need to do the thing, pay off the EPA like officials, and then suddenly like they're like, ah, we don't have to do it anymore, you can change the wording. We didn't know that there was a problem, so we didn't do no one did the experiments, everyone just assumed it was fine.
Mhm.
Like that
It
was the
was safe,
problem,
yeah.
right? Yeah, like
Mhm.
that's the part that really is really sketchy. But anyway, before
But
we like jump
also,
so far forward, we got to go back to Agent Orange.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say I mean I think that's interesting. One of the things I think one of the things I was reading about with this was that um or I guess I think one of the things that's interesting about this is that kind of when we do these pesticide approvals, like it is usually just this kind of dialogue between the company and like the EPA or the FDA. This is true for drugs too, and like usually that stuff never gets published, which I think is interesting. I think the rationale is that kind of that the peer review is being done by that agency and it sometimes involves things that would be like trade secrets for the company. But I think like I would like it would be nice if we could like see that like what data is being sent and examined in those things too.
I feel like
And
for pharmaceutical drugs, there actually are published after, like, you can see what clinical trials are being run, like, because they you can see
yeah,
on the NIH website like who's being recruited, and then they're required to publish everything at the end.
I mean,
Uh,
you do see the like the clinical trial results they'll publish. Then
yeah,
and with these toxicological assessments, like you do see the results. Like the EPA will say, like, okay, this showed no evidence of mutagenic activity, but you
yep,
don't see the actual like data like would be presented in a paper, and you don't necessarily see the kind of deliberations that's happening between the company and the regulatory bodies. So like both the FDA and the EPA, like when you submit a thing, they say like, okay, we're going to need to see this kind of data. Like these are the
yep.
kinds of studies we want you to run. And I think that's the part where I'm like, as a scientist, I kind of wish that like this was publicly available.
That's true.
Um,
Like more
yeah,
open data. Good
yeah,
luck getting companies to show their books to you.
yeah. I mean, like we could. I mean, there's no reason in theory we couldn't pass a law that said that's how it goes. I mean, the NIH essentially did that. They passed a lot of laws that basically said like, hey, when you do clinical trials, you have to make them publicly
Yep.
available, and that has actually worked fine.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
yeah,
Um, okay, wait, let's start
but
at the
yeah.
beginning.
Anyway, the Agent Orange. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, let's start with Agent Orange. So, 2,4-D, or and I like a really close relative of it, 2,4,5-T. They're both growth hormones. They're acids like a benzene ring and like a long tail. And it was discovered by Franklin D. Jones because his kids got poison ivy, and he was just like, we gotta get rid of the ivy.
Oh, so this is why you were talking about the poison ivy. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like that was his intention. He was a chemist. He was just like, let me go see if I can make a weed
So he's
killer.
just like, okay, I'm gonna like declare war on this plant that hurt my children.
Pretty much. And he discovered 2,4-D, and then the beauty of 2,4-D is that you can spray it on your grass at home, and it would basically leave your grass okay because it only targets broadleaf weeds, but not grass. So not crops like corn and wheat, because those are all grasses. So like those are fine, but dandelions are not fine. So it actually is the reason the United States has all these lawns. Like it's only possible because of this kind of pesticide, like because you can just spray it on everything and it'll just kill the weeds and it leaves your grass, like your green lawns of ugly. um you can tell where my personal opinion on grass is.
Just like grass.
Yeah, grass, lawns. um Anyway, so it was like being used everywhere. People were thought it was fine because you could use it on like people, like you could drink it. And it was because the method of
Well,
action
you
is
could
that,
drink the 2,4-D. Yeah.
yeah, 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 people would say
Hmm.
it was super D, and it was mostly safe
Hmm.
until until you're exposed to a lot of it. So like you said,
Makes sense.
for
Yeah.
every, like, I forget the numbers, but like 1,000 gallons of it, you would make a couple molecules of this other thing called dioxin, which is where the benzene ring that with like the acid tail. So when it's like that in that configuration, super safe, just an acid,
Hmm.
like like does its thing. But if the two benzene rings bind to each other, and this happens when in certain temperatures, and it just happens probabilistically, low probable, but like probabilistically will happen, especially if you're exposed to a lot of it, then it's not as safe anymore. And so this happens at plants. And so at a plant that where they made a lot of 2,4-D, 2,4,5-T actually. I think it was making a bunch of that. And then like part of the building just exploded because the temperature was not regulated. It causes an exothermic reaction when
Mhm.
you're like making
Okay, so this is the explosion acne thing we're getting
yeah,
into
yeah,
now.
yeah. So like as you're doing these chemical reactions, you basically have to like take a temperature to different you have to take your chemical to different temperatures, so like different parts of the acid chain would be like attached. Anyway, during this process, you can fuck up if your temperature is not held at a particular temperature, you can cause an explosion. And after that explosion, a whole bunch of this dioxin, we didn't know it at the time. They didn't know it was dioxin. A whole bunch of this chemical was just like raining down on all the people that worked at the plants, and all of them got horrific acne. Basically, their skin melted off.
Huh.
It was really bad. And then they were like, they tried to sue them, and were like, yeah, like our faces melted off. Like, what the fuck? And they're like,
Wait, I feel like having your face melt off and getting acne are like two different medical conditions. Like, I,
you should so okay, some of the descriptions of this acne was that uh it would smell different, like the room full of men like on their like in hospital beds, like the
uh-huh.
skin would smell like it was excreting a different chemical. Like that's like the
Oh
descriptions that
wow.
the
Yeah.
the doctors gave. Like it was like a really specific smell, and like they just had like skin slough off their face. It was fairly bad.
I'm confused why this is described as acne, but okay.
Because there were like bumps and pustule, like
Oh,
like
okay, fair. Yeah.
um
Man, just like imagine working in this factory and just like everyone's skin is melting off, and then like your supervisor's just like, yeah, that's probably like unrelated. Like,
well, so that's the thing. Like whenever they did the safety test, they did it on the product itself. So they would rub that
hmm
on like the ear of mice and on rabbits. So and then the mice
hmm
and rabbit are fine, like no dermatitis, nothing. Okay, so after this explosion, um a like nothing came of it. They tried to sue them. They did the safety test, and they're like, it's safe, like should be fine. Y'all just all have acne. So like 8 years pass, and this German doctor, German dermatologist, was treating this person, all these people in a town in Hamburg that worked at a 2,4-D plant, and they all had this horrible acne. And he was just like, wait, like there's something in this. Like how do you else do you explain all my patients having this horrible acne disease? And that's when they discovered. So like 8 years later, because completely separate from us, not where it exploded happened, it was just people that were working in this plant that were just being exposed to it. They discovered this, and then he like wrote to Monsanto's and DuPont and like all the other companies, and I was like, guys, this is bad. This is the step when you hold the temperature. If it's not super stable during the step of the chemical generation process, you can accidentally make a lot of dioxins. And when
dioxin. hmm
yeah, when that happens, you can, it becomes this horrible, face melting acid thing. And um so the companies knew, they got this email, and they said later on during lawsuits and stuff, they said, we never received these emails or mails. We never received this message. We didn't know. Oh my gosh, it's hurting our people. We had no idea. So that's like their initial thing. So the worst part of this is that during the Vietnam War, South Vietnam was like basically full of jungle, and they were like, we need to, make headway in this war. And so they're like, we got you. And so so Monsanto's was like, "We got you, U.S. government. We'll give you some weed killers so we can like decimate the jungles of Vietnam." And so they just like put it on planes. This was called Operation Ranch Hand, and the Agent Orange is 24D and 245T. And it was just like a mixture of 50-50 of them. And they just like sprayed it everywhere. And then guess what? A bunch of Vietnamese and American soldiers all got the acne and the burns, and it was really
And the like
prevalent
face
everywhere.
melting thing.
And
Yeah.
face melting thing. And then so then afterwards they were like, "Oh, we melted the face off our own soldiers accidentally. Oh shit, this is bad. We need to
And
fix
that's
it."
why the VA covers Agent Orange exposure. Yeah.
And that's also why it was not the most dominant. So then they were like, we need to come up with a different chemical to sell, or else no American is gonna buy 2,4-D anymore, because look what it did to all our soldiers in Vietnam.
It's like you're not gonna like buy like Agent Orange to use on your tomato garden.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, no one wants to use that anymore. And so they're like, we
uh-huh.
need to come up with a new thing. So in comes this, so they've been working on this for like years, because they knew it was bad. They wouldn't have worked on a different oh, maybe they would have worked on scientists be scientists. They're like, we need to find a safer version of pesticide that would do the same thing, like kill all the weeds, leave our plants alone, our food plants alone. So in
Mhm.
comes this other chemist named John Franz, and he discovered glyphosate, which is part of the shikatami pathway.
Chicken meat. Yeah.
Shigamate, yeah, pathway. Um, this does kill everything, though. It kills all plants, fungi, bugs, or not bugs, sorry,
I think I think
bacteria.
mostly just plants, right? Like I think part of part of this is like I mean at least for like animals like us, like we don't use this pathway. So this is like
Correct.
one of the reasons that it was safer is that it's this completely different pathway that's found mostly in plants.
Yes, shikami pathway. So anything that's
Mhm.
green, green
Yeah.
things, but also bacteria. Bacteria use it, and fungi use it, even though they're not green.
Mhm.
But not humans, not mammals. So it's like safe for your pets. And so you
Mhm.
might have heard of it. There, like it's called Roundup. In like you could buy that at the grocery store now.
Mhm.
Be like, ah, this is the pesticide that is safe. It's, we don't have this pathway, so we should be fine. And so like I agree. I'm like, yeah, we don't have this
Mhm.
pathway. It genuinely should be fine. And then until I was sat there thinking about my gut bacteria, then I was just like, my gut bacteria might not be fine, but I will be fine for now.
I
Um,
mean, and like I feel like that's where it comes back to the dose thing though, because it's like you were saying, like, okay, is the problem like that there's traces of it? And like, I mean, if you eat cheese, the cheese contains a lot of a lot of fungi that like produce antibiotics. And like it turns out like pretty much anything you eat is gonna affect your gut bacteria. And it like
no,
I think the interesting thing is just I mean, I think the important thing is like with the when we were talking about like, oh, only 70% of the studies that we showed like I think it's very hard to rule out that there's very, very small effects, but I think with a lot of these things, we can rule out that there's really large concerning effects.
yeah. Um, okay. We're at glyphosate works really well. It kills all plants, leaves mammals alive. And
Hmm.
then well, okay, so then that became a problem because farmers could only use it like once or twice. So like at the beginning before you plant, you can just like kill everything in the field. And then the cool thing about glyphosate is that it also biodegrades because it like naturally occurs. So you can just it just breaks down and goes in the soil and it stops killing things after it does its thing one time. So you like spray your field and then like after a while you can just plant your things. There's no like seeds of weeds there anymore and it goes all the way to the
Hmm.
roots. Then you can grow your plants and then when you're done you gotta uh you can like spray it again at the end of the season. So the problem with that is that during the season if there are any weeds that grow you can't use it basically because you'll kill your own plants as well. And so they were on a, I guess, like a mad dash, like scientifically, to find glyphosate, um, glyphosate resistant plants, so glyphosate resistant corn and soybeans and every vegetable crop. And so that was like the thing to look for. And they looked for a while, they couldn't find anything. And then there was a bunch of papers that came out from like academia, like non-government or not non-commercial labs that were like, we have made tobacco slightly resistant to glyphosate, or we have
Huh.
made
Uh-huh.
lilacs, some flowers, slightly resistant to the chemical. And they were like, oh shoot, they're coming for us, we need to do it fast, like we need to find it soon. And so a bunch of scientists that worked for Monsanto's, they were like, well, we make a lot of glyphosate and there's probably a bunch of glyphosate leaching out of our factories. Let's go like collect some water samples in and around this factory and look at the goop. And so that's what they
And
did.
see like what's still growing in there.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
what's still alive near and around the factory. And I was just there, I was listening to this, I was like learning about this, and I was just like, you knew that your factory is just leaching pesticides into the environment, and that's chill. And they know about it because they literally they utilize that to make the discoveries, the microbes. So they found a strain of salmonella that was that did not use the shikatami pathway. So basically it just evolved alternative ways to do the thing it does to stay alive. And they took some of these genes, they loaded into a gene gun, and then they just like transfected a bunch of I think they started with like corn or soybean. And so
Hmm.
now they had, this line of soybean and corn that was Roundup ready. And this is the part where I think, okay, like I'm still cool with this. Like I feel like this is actually kind of
Hmm.
cool science.
Yeah.
This is where I think it got evil. They were like, now we have these we have both Roundup, which kills everything, and then we have plants that survive Roundup. So you in as a combo, if you have this two combo, you can grow anywhere and you'll be amazing, have great yields. The problem
Right.
is that if your neighbor doesn't use this pesticide, all their plants are going to die. Because you have to spray the Roundup, right? So if there's a wind or a draft of wind and it like just spreads
Oh, so
over
like if
to
they're
the field
Roundup,
yonder.
it's if they're not using the Roundup ready things.
Yeah. So if they're not using Roundup ready seeds, then their seed's gonna die. So then
I
their
mean,
neighbors are, yeah.
if you're really bad at spraying it, right? Like, I mean,
I mean,
that.
however they were spraying the pesticides, basically it became this like social warfare. So like Monsanto's took the social warfare and basically made, because and to use their seeds, basically they had to sign this like document that said you have accepted these rules and regulations. And one of the rules is like you can't collect the seeds and grow them again. You have to snitch on your neighbors if you see them use seeds that like were not like you're like required to. And they have the right to come and check your plants and go onto your land. Like Monsanto has the right to come and do, like, it's like some really horrible rules that like really sucks. And otherwise they can sue you the bejesus out of you. And everyone had to sign. Oh, and to sign, you just to open a bag of seeds. By opening the bag of seeds, you agreed to
Then you're.
these rules.
Hmm.
So they had to sign a really kind of one-sided technology agreement. And half of it was because if my neighbor was using these seeds, I kind of have to, or else like I'll have my yield would go down. And there was like, so this happened around the world, not just in the US. This happened in India, happened in like all over the world. Like farmers were like pitted against each other, and like people got like murdered and shit. Like it was bad.
Yeah.
There's like a whole like you can read up about all the wars, and it's
Right.
not that long ago. It was like in the 2000s. Um,
And I think an important thing to note here is like like this is not so much Monsanto being specifically evil. This is just kind of like how patented seeds are handled. So like there's this Roundup Ready system, but it's like basically this is like actually kind of like most of the seeds that are used in commercial farming right now come with this kind of license agreement that you agree to when you use them. So I think it's not like it is evil, but it's like I feel like this is often presented as like this one company was this huge outlier, and that seems like it's not the case. Like it seems like this is really just kind of a systemic problem in like intellectual property. There's
Yeah.
also this weird technical thing, which is so most seeds that are used in commercial farming are hybrid seeds, and we usually don't collect them anyway because the plants that you get from the second generation are weird and not up to spec. So this like I think this is like this sometimes gets talked about as like, oh, people can't save these Monsanto seeds and replant them. And that generally wasn't just isn't really done that much in commercial farming anyway. It's like a little bit of a kind of red herring.
Yeah. Well, the part that is I think is evil is that it pitted farmers against each other by
Yeah,
the snitching system. They literally
that's
had a
true. Yeah.
phone line called 1-800 Roundup and it was call if you think your neighbor is growing Roundup seeds when they don't have, do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
when they didn't pay for it, or they would like secretly go and plant Roundup seeds or Monsanto seeds in their neighbor's yard and then call the
And
call
then
the
call the
and then call
yeah.
1-800 Roundup,
Yep.
and it was like super crazy, and they were so litigious, like aggressive lawyer system, and they like sued the bejesus out of a lot of people, a lot of farmers, and like a lot of small farmers folded and were bankrupted by the system because they literally cannot afford lawyers. Like they didn't have the
Hmm.
infrastructure to handle large lawyers, and then they would be bought out by larger companies that were like, yeah, we can hire the lawyers, we can do the thing, and a lot of people lost their farms. Like these are real story, like genuine stories that have happened. And like even people that were living in the neighborhoods that like with farms that did not use any of these seeds, they were not part of this at all. They're like, we grow an organic farm, we did not do anything
Hmm.
related to any of this. They had trouble too because they were in and around this area. They would get, their neighbors might call on them on 1-800 Roundup, and then their PIs would show up in their house and like interrogate them. It
And the other thing that would happen that I've read about is like, okay, people would plant Roundup Ready seeds, and then those plants would produce seeds, and those seeds would just blow into somewhere else, and
the
then those
sperms,
people
the
would get
pollen,
internal.
the
Yeah,
pollen would go, and I was like, yeah, plants be plants, man. Like you can try it. This is nature.
yeah.
Nature finds a way. Like the wind blows. Like how corn has like these like little stringy stamens to literally disperse the pollen. Like that's their like
Mhm.
what they do. That's their normal activity. And like
Yeah.
you're planted next to a farm that doesn't have the same plants, and then now you end up with a bunch of hybrids that are both, you know, it's bad.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
can
and
you
it
can
is tricky
imagine
because
the
like,
fights, yeah.
yeah. I mean, and like there were cases where it seems like there was genuinely like piracy going on too. Like there were definitely, I mean, there were definitely cases where someone would be like, I don't know how this got here. It just must have just blown on. And then like the court would look at it and they'd be like, okay, but it's like literally all of your corn has this gene. That seems like a little suspicious, doesn't it? So like I think yeah, that like I feel like this kind of underlines another point that I wanted to mention in talking about pesticides is that literally everyone like who's publicly involved in this field is like sketchy as fuck. Like the farmers are sketchy as fuck. Like Monsanto is sketchy as fuck. There's there's
Even the
Monsanto doing
scientists are sketchy as fuck.
yeah like there's the Monsanto doing the doxing, and you were saying like, oh, if you talked about this, like they would come for you. But the other thing is like there's all these like sketchy environmental groups that will also come for you if you say the pesticides are okay. Like I know a lot of people who like work in food science, and they have all been harassed by these people who would like file FOIA requests to get their emails and try and like find evidence that they were in some sort of conspiracy, and like just it is extremely crazy. I think it
Yeah.
makes it really hard to do science, and it's like I think like I mean, I think many of the scientists working in all of these genuinely like are not corrupt. Like I think they are really genuinely trying to do a good job and make something that's safe. But I think the weird thing about working in this environment is like, for example, like if you know that people are going to read your emails and try and like interpret them and use it to smear you, you're going to communicate differently and often in ways that look kind of sketchy. And so it creates this just really bad environment for doing science, I think.
Yeah. Okay, and then we're back to 1983 EPA study that was rediscovered after the IARC papers came out. IARC paper came out, then they ghost wrote a bunch of reviews. Like, you know how usually when there is a disagreement in science, like it's very public.
Mhm,
Like it's rare for a
mhm,
disagreement in science to go so public that regular non-scientists read about it. Like when there's science beef, like in neuroscience, for example, it'll be like paper in science, then it'll be like a paper in science like rebuttal or like news views or something, and then like it'll go back and forth, and then you see all of the trains of thought, like here's the evidence, here's the thing. But here it was just like, here is one evidence, and then they hit them with like a no, 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 absolutely not. And then they weren't actually experiments, they were just reviews. So it
like
was
they
like
were just people,
yeah, we did a
huh?
meta
Mhm.
analysis of, like, we did another meta analysis, and this is a review of all the historical papers that say it's actually safe. But they didn't actually add new paper. Like they were clearly motivated in like flooding the news with like the
Yeah.
the
I mean,
opposing
to be
views.
honest, like I kind of trust that more. I feel like if it's a meta-analysis, then you can actually be like, okay, let me take all the effect sizes from these papers and see if there's papers you missed and like redo it. Versus if they're publishing original data, then I just be like that's like when they're publishing the original data, I'm just like, why would you publish this from people who like have an unavoidable conflict of interest?
Yeah.
I think,
The other thing is the conflict of interest. For me, like every paper had conflicts of interest, and I was like, how is this a thing? Like, why is there not like a Chinese wall? Like there's ethics
yeah.
for like there's like things that we don't review papers from our own bosses once we start our own groups for like 10 years.
Mhm.
Like that's just like a general rule. Like we don't do it because at that time like your boss still has power over you, something like that. Like here
Yeah.
there's no gap. That, like, how there's like rules, or like there should be rules against like lobbying, like you can't lobby for something
Mhm.
until you've not worked in that space for like
Yeah, the
a
like
certain number of years.
revolving door laws. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, like things like that. Like we have these rules, but like why not put them on paper? Do you know what I mean? Like make them for real and like disclose it. It's like, hey, this person worked at this company for 10 years. And they no longer work there now.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like disclosing it is good. I just like the thing to me is that's very weird about it is like even like what is the point of Monsanto doing these reviews? Like I feel like we don't necessarily learn anything from it. At the same like I kind of put it in the same like category as like when the environmental working group like is like, oh yeah, here's we found like these 15 foods are the most contaminated with pesticides, and you're just like, this is just an algorithm you made up so that you could like get publicity. Like I just like there's just no real scientific benefit to doing it when you have these organizations that are just so driven by other interests. I mean,
Oof. um oh, and then after these lawsuits happened,
mhm.
so basically the first lawsuit happened, and then they immediately sold it to Bayer. So all the executives just like rode off into the sunset with
Yeah.
all the money and was like,
I
peace
really
out.
like this. I really like this comment though, by the way. It's the poison ivy's fault.
We could start with the poison. It was just it
Like,
was
yeah,
just a
the
concerned father. For
but
his
like it
kids.
like the poison ivy started this war. Like
Uh, sorry, my brain just went straight to Harley Quinn, and it looks like we can
Yeah.
blame it all on poison ivy. Um, so they sold this to Bayer, and this is which is a German company, and they were like not a problem anymore. So Monsanto's actually doesn't exist anymore, and it's been sold
Mhm.
out. Like they absorbed some of the executives, the rest just like pieced out. Um, and then so and then Bayer is a different company, and they have like different rules, and they're German. But guess what? Roundup in America right now no longer has glyphosate in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Huh.
they took out.
What are they using instead?
And we are back to Agent Orange. So now they put
Mhm.
240 in it.
Interesting. So now
I
you
know.
just so now you just like buy the 24D.
Yeah.
Now we are just like using the Agent Orange on our tomatoes.
Yep.
Um
Pretty much.
um
Because consumers have a short memory and don't remember.
yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, and I feel like there's different parts of this. I mean, so one thing that has also happened is that a lot of weeds have actually become resistant to glyphosate.
Yes.
Similar to kind of how it was discovered. Um, like now, a lot of plants have actually just evolved ways to become resistant to it, like like um, naturally. Interestingly, a lot of these plants actually convert it into a different chemical called AMPA, which is like less harmful to the plant, but more harmful to us. So like in conclusion, like maybe plants just can suck. But end
In
of stream.
conclusion, nature finds a way.
Yeah, I mean it really is like an arms race. But but yeah, I think but that's another part that I think is like some things have moved away from glyphosate just because it's also not working anymore. But I think
Yep.
also this association with cancer really scared people.
Yep.
Yeah. And
So
interestingly, I mean, I think this is one of the things when I was reading about this, I guess I'm not convinced that like if you swapped out glyphosate for anything else, or even if you swapped out some of these other pesticides with like other natural pesticides or whatever, like I'm really not convinced that that would actually improve people's health at
no,
all.
no, not at all. So a lot of the
Yeah,
organic pesticides are neurotoxins.
yeah, like rotenone.
Yeah. Like
Yeah,
they work by fucking the nervous system, and I was like, how is that better?
yeah. I mean, in fairness, like a lot of these are like a lot of these target insects too. And it's like it's
Yeah.
harder to kill insects and not kill people than it is to kill plants and not kill people because like they're more similar. But um yeah,
Yeah.
I think yeah, like I think that is I mean that was one thing that I was thinking about when I was like reading all this. I'm like, okay, if you want to say like if you're like saying like, okay, you shouldn't use glyphosate or you shouldn't use this other pesticide because of these effects. I mean, the obvious question is like, what should you do, and is that other option actually better? Um, and I did find some papers. So it seems like farm workers who work on farms that don't use any pesticides at all do seem credibly to be in better health. They have lower rates of DNA damage overall. And so that like what that suggests is that like eliminating pesticide use overall is probably good for the health of the farm workers. It
Yeah.
probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense or it doesn't make a whole lot of difference for in the food we're eating because we're not really eating any significant levels anyway. But like as an industrial safety thing, it helps. The
Yeah.
problem with that is that if you eliminated all the pesticides, we would like need to cut down all the rainforest just to feed the current population. Um, like that is
That is also bad. Um,
yeah.
yeah, but I mean, we are in an automated age. We could probably robot our way out of this and not need a farm worker to physically go in and like be sprayed by dioxins in the near future. Do you know what I mean? Like, look,
Yeah,
we can science our way out of this. Like, we just need there are
and
people working on this.
yeah, and honestly, I think this is a weird thing about the way that this is talked about is that it's often talked about like, okay, if this chemical is toxic, we shouldn't use it, and we should like sue this company that is making it. And like when we're talking about like industrial and agricultural uses of these chemicals, I mean, we generally accept that like things that are used in industry can be toxic to you, and like the way that we deal with that is usually like with PPE and exposure controls.
Yeah.
Like we like I mean, both of us like regularly work with things that are mutagens, and
Yeah. Are
like we
quite
don't say
toxic.
like, okay, we should ban this. We just say like we need to be very careful about
Yeah.
limiting exposure to it.
Yeah, that's true.
Um,
We and the nice thing is because when we talk about it, when the media talks about it, like side effect of this is that companies will hopefully they will preemptively do these things before people die and get sick and there's a whole lawsuit. Like they're taking things off the market when they're like, maybe not that great. Like let's not use that for our household consumption. Let's only use that, for commercial farming when they have, the correct PPE. Like
PPE and
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So like they
Mhm,
are kind of preemptively doing the hey, maybe let's not have this around their dogs because they're the humans and the dogs
mhm,
are both getting non-Hodgkin's lymphoma because they're like out there spraying their grass all the time. Like they're
mhm.
starting to do things like that, which is kind of cool. I guess that's a slightly positive way because
Yeah,
lawsuits are expensive and preemptively doing things that are not harmful to the
yeah,
consumers will also save you money in future. So please
yeah.
take care of
And
us as
also
well.
just like don't spray the pesticide on your face. Like I feel like that is like a large part of the problem in like
Yeah. I mean, the people that worked in those companies, they're like,
yeah, I
there's
know they
no
weren't
other
like
jobs.
spraying it
Like,
on their face. Yeah.
yeah, they were
And
just
I mean
in
I'm
the room.
yeah, I'm being like very snarky in this comment, but like I think the point that I was making is that like to a certain extent or to a large extent I would say actually the problem with pesticides is not that they can be toxic to humans. It's that we don't necessarily have good exposure controls for them like we do for other toxic substances. And I mean, in many cases we do, but like when there's been problems, it's often been because of a lack of these kind of industrial exposure controls is really the reason more than like because it's inherently toxic. Post this YouTube video. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
I'll
like
put
the
it in the
source
chat.
of half of
Yeah.
the things I said today. Well, I want to say like 80% because that was my homework. Basically, I was watching this video and actually like, hey, actually, we should just look into, and then those are the sources. So that's
Nice.
the
Yeah.
so that
Is
would
this
be
one public? Yeah.
yeah, I think it is public. You can
Yeah.
check. You should check it. There's a couple books in there that are pretty good. Um, yeah. Maybe
Yeah.
we'll come in with a lead video, and the title might be "Are
I
We
think
Getting Stupider?"
you were saying like you were talking about how October we should just talk about things that are scary, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. October,
Yeah.
the fall is our usual. We'll definitely do our creepy animals episode, but let's just do creepy things that scare us.
I feel like that's like most episodes actually we talk about things that scare us.
I guess,
Also,
yeah.
NASA maybe found evidence that Mars had life on it, so that was kind of cool. We should
Heck
talk about
yeah.
that at some point. Yeah. Um,
I mean, it's it like small single cellular life?
yeah. And
Yeah,
it's
okay.
not currently alive. It seems to be like fossilized microbes, but it's
That's still pretty cool.
pretty interesting. I mean, it's pretty like we have arguably discovered evidence of life on another planet, which is something that people have been dreaming about for hundreds of years. Like,
It is slightly anticlimactic when it's like this is our first alien contact and it's like a bacteria between some
I
rocks.
mean. We also found out that like the military tried to shoot a missile at a UFO and it just kind of bounced off the UFO. Um,
That's better. That's less
yeah, yeah.
anticlimactic.
Like that's like if you're looking through like that. Oh, also we talked about that new comet, and the same Harvard guy is also claiming that this one is like also an alien spacecraft.
Oh, because it's like the pencil shaped one, the long
No, it's
shaped
like
one.
it's no, he's saying like the plume that it's producing doesn't look like a comet plume. It looks more like a rocket plume.
Oh,
I
cool.
think, I mean, like, I have yet to see this guy say anything is not an alien spacecraft. Like he seems to just think that like everything is an alien spacecraft.
Yeah, because it's like if it's not identifiable, it goes into UFO, and all UFOs are alien.
Yeah, I mean, even if it is identifiable, like there is like a meteorite that landed in the ocean, and then he like went and tried to go get it and then claimed that like the meteorite had alien bacteria in it. And a lot of other physicists were like, no, those are coal particles. But he was like, no, it's definitely alien bacteria. So I think he thinks literally like everything in space is aliens.
We should do a meteorite episode actually.
Mhm.
Because I think I was really surprised when I learned that meteorites are how we date Earth actually. So
Ooh, yeah, we
yeah,
should do it.
let's do meteorite episode. Let's like sandwich our scaries
Yeah,
with
yep. I mean,
with
arguably aliens are scary, but yeah, but we could, yeah. Actually, meteorites can be scary.
yeah, that's
But
true. Actually, meteorites can be scary. And with that thought, I think we are out of time. Thank you for joining us. We're
yep.
Philosophy Sciencing. Come back next Friday.